Okay, we're on page 86. We are at my friend was sitting next to me, or is this when she said this, my friend stood up and told her? Or after she finished? Okay, that's where we are.
Start off with after she finished. Yeah.
Okay, so after she finished, remember if you're talking, you're reading. Yes, and I am recording. Yes, the class is being recorded so that I can upload it into our Google Classroom for those individuals that are gone, because we have a lot of people gone today, okay? I am recording right now.
Oh, so you heard everything that everyone was saying?
Yes.
Since the beginning of the class?
No, I just started. You're probably yes, right now I am. Probably should. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. After she finished, and we all had the opportunity to give her a hug and have her sign our books, this is Meek that we're talking about, I realized how lucky we were. Most people will probably never have the opportunity to hear her story in person like we did. A legacy left by one girl, carried by one woman, was passed on to a new generation of teens who have the chance to make a difference, like Anne's diary did. If it were me doing this, and I knew that my teacher is probably going to ask me to write about tolerance, FYI, hint, hint. This is a quote I'm going to pull. Actually, here it is. Hang on. Not I was on the wrong one. A legacy.
A legacy left by one girl.
I wrote it already.
Left by one girl. All the way to Anne's diary did, right? A legacy left by one girl, carried by one woman, was passed on to a new generation of teens who have a chance to make a difference, like Anne's diary did. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to write the whole thing down for myself, okay? But for you guys, you probably should. Okay? And this is on page 86. And so you might want to write that down as well, okay? Now, after meeting Meep, I can honestly say that my heroes are not just made up of characters. My hero is real. So for me, that was a really good line, because we tend to think about life. We tend to think about the things our parents teach us, teachers teach us, our friends teach us, people who are younger than me teach me, and vice versa. We tend to think about that kind of stuff, and we don't really realize that there's got to be tolerance there, and there's got to be legacies that are passed on, right? Okay? And what kind of legacy do you want to pass on to your children? Do you want them to be prejudiced? Do you want them to be angry? Do you want them to be mean and bullies? Or do you want them to be nice and kind? Okay. Diary 43. Dear Diary, if I could live an eternity and not change a thing or exist for a blink of an eye and alter everything, what would you choose? This was one of Miss G's questions after we read this poem, Moment. Let him wish his life for the sorrows of a stone, never knowing the first thread of these, never knowing the pain of ice as its crystals slowly grow, needles pressing in on the heart, to live forever and never feel a thing, to wait a million lifetimes only to erode and become sand. Wish not for the stone, but for the fire. Last only moments, but change everything. To be lightning, to exist for less than a moment, yet in that moment to expose the world to every open eye. Oh, to be thunder, to clap and ring, to rumble in memories, minds, and spines. To chill the soul and shake the very ground, pounding even the sand into smaller pieces, or the mountain brooding extinct, yet gathering for one fatal moment the power to blow the top off the world, oh, to last the blink of an eye and leave nothing but nothing unmoved behind you. Vincent Giuliano, January 9th, 1991. Miss G gave us this poem written by someone who had gone to college with her. Ironically, he died shortly after he wrote the poem by drowning in the San Francisco Bay. After we read the poem, Miss G broke it down into its simplest form. She wanted no part to be misunderstood. She wanted this poem to become our motto in class and our principle in life. She told us to be the kind of people that have enough passion to change the world. If we let ourselves be fire, thunder, or lightning, we could alter everything. We all thought that Miss Gurrell's lesson was really powerful, but all but us? Lightning and thunder? Not likely. The below average, sure to drop out kids? Please. Ever since I can remember, we've been put down, stepped on, and now all of a sudden we have the potential to change the world? Leave it up to Miss Gurrell to come up with some crazy shit like that. She tried to convince us that we were capable of anything, but it wasn't until Meep's visit that it finally made sense. I remember talking about how much we admire her for risking everything to care for Anne and her family. She said that she had only done it because it was the right thing to do. Someone stood up and said that Meep was their hero. No, you're the real hero, she answered. There she was, one of the most heroic women of all time, telling us that we were heroes. Do not let Anne's death be in vain, Meep said, using her words to bring it all together. Meep wanted us to keep Anne's message alive. It was up to us to remember it. Meep and Miss Gurrell had the same purpose all along. They wanted us to seize the moment. Miss Gurrell wanted us to realize that we could change the way things were. And Meep wanted to take Anne's message and share it with the world. That's when it all became crystal clear. Anne's message of tolerance was to become our message. At that moment, I became like fire and like lightning and like thunder. Diary 44, Dear Diary, I can't believe that Zlata Filipovich is coming. Our letters actually paid off, and after reading her book, I couldn't do anything but relate her life with mine. It is so interesting to realize that another person my same age went through such a horrible experience seeking refuge from a war. Even though I didn't physically experience a war, my family managed to escape one just in time from Nicaragua. Blasts of gunfire thundered throughout my country, too. I can candidly say that in the back of my mind, I didn't think Zlata would actually respond to our invitation. I felt like we were writing to a celebrity, and all we would end up hearing in return was a letter from her agent saying, "Thank you, and here's a signed photograph." Zlata's response, on the other hand, was much more gratifying. Not only did she personally write back to us, but she also mentioned that she would be more than happy to meet us. I feel like I am about to meet the person whom I could relate to. Diary 45. Dear Diary, March 24th, 1996 was the most unforgettable day ever. I had the pleasure of going with my family to the Newport Beach Marriott Hotel to meet Zlata Filipovich and her parents, Malik and Alicia, and her best friend, Myrna. My parents got dressed up in their nicest clothes for the occasion. I wore a suit. We drove to the hotel not knowing what to expect from the evening. As soon as we walked inside the Marriott Hotel, we felt important and decided to be there. A photographer took our pictures, and waiters in tuxedos and white gloves served us appetizers off of silver trays. They even served us punch in champagne glasses. Since Miss Gurrell works there, she made sure that everyone went out of their way to treat us like royalty. When Zlata came down to meet us, all of us surrounded her as if she was a celebrity. We all wanted to take pictures with her and ask her questions about herself. It was so interesting to see how we had a girl our own age that is such a role model to us. The fact that she was actually here was so unbelievable. I found out we had a lot in common. We both like listening to music and being with our friends. Zlata left such a good first impression that I'll never forget her. As we continued to celebrate, we had a formal dinner in her honor. The food was delicious. There must have been at least 5 courses. There were so many knives and forks at our table. I'm glad Miss Gurrell went over which ones we were supposed to use first. Before the night was over, Miss Gurrell told us that this was just the beginning and there's more to come. I left the Marriott with a good feeling and high expectations about our future. Diary 46, Dear Diary. My friendship with Mary reminds me of Zlata and Mirna's friendship. They have been through a war together because of the race and religion, and they are still best friends. The only difference is that neither of their families want to prevent their friendship. There's not even a war in this country, yet I can't even go to a movie with my friend because she's white. Why does that matter anymore? Yeah, I thought we were in the new era and we're getting over the race issue. Yeah, right. I'm living in a big fantasy world. The time hasn't come for people to overcome hatred of others because of something as insignificant as race. She's the best friend a person could ever have. She's smart. She doesn't just hear me when she listens to me, and we have so much in common, but she's white. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a problem to me anyway. To everyone else, it is a problem, especially my family. More specifically, my father. My father gets angry when I spend time with her. He says, "Why don't you have any black friends?" Or, "So you're going over to those honkies' house again?" Come on, who uses those words anymore? He warned me to watch my back because those white people always stab you in the back. He has no idea what kind of person she is. I can't believe how incredibly ignorant he is. I think it's because he grew up in an era of pure racism. Worse, he grew up in the South, and racism was all he saw. Does that make it okay or take his anger out on me and my friends? I don't think so. My father thinks she's turning me into a white girl because she's my best friend and I hang out with her all the time. She has never done anything negative toward me, and even if she did, I wouldn't look at her as if the whole race did something negative towards me. Color is the last thing that comes to my mind when we hang out together. We have more important things to be concerned about. Diary 47, Dear Diary. Knowledge comes in strange ways. I never thought that a person who lived over 10,000 miles away could impact me, but tonight that changed. Zlata has been with us for 4 days now, and we've really gotten to know her well. And she's just like us. When I met her, we were wearing the same shoes. I couldn't believe she was wearing Doc Martens, and when we started to talk about get to know each other, we talked about the same things, about Pearl Jam and how cute Eddie Vedder was. And if I didn't know that she was Zlata Filipovic, the famous teen author from war-torn Bosnia, I would have just assumed that she was a normal 15-year-old girl who liked to shop and hang out with her friends. The best part is that she was a normal 15-year-old girl. When she came and we were invited to the Croatian hall where she would speak. We didn't want to go in empty-handed, so we gathered medicinal supplies, clothes, and even old toys. All these were gathered to be sent back to Bosnia. This would be our first encounter with people who had been persecuted in Bosnia. Okay, there we are. We expect nothing less than from them to be accepted and tolerant. I thought they would care less what color, creed, and race any of us were. Unfortunately, some proved me wrong. As Zlata was speaking in front of the people from Croatia, they were all nodding their heads. Yes, yes, they would say. She spoke about all of the injustices that one must go through for a simple label or belief. She mentioned her experience as a 14-year-old growing up in war-torn Bosnia, how hard it was for her to lose friends because of the way they looked or what they believed in. At this point, we were the ones nodding our heads. There is one thing that really stands out in my mind from that night, however. As she was answering questions, a couple of adults asked her what ethnicity she was. Croatian? Muslim? Serbian? I was upset that instead of getting the message that she was trying to convey, they were too preoccupied with the nationality she was. Were these the same adults that preached how wrong racism and discrimination are? Were these the same people that a minute ago agreed that we shouldn't care about labels? Zlata looked around, stared at us, and simply said, "I am a human being." That's exactly what we all are. We spend so much time trying to figure out what race a person is when we could just get to know them as an individual. I felt like answering their question with a question. Does it matter? Will it make a difference if she is Croatian, Muslim, Serbian? She taught me the most valuable lesson that anybody could ever have, and to think that she's only 15. Ever since that day, I've tried not to accept society's labels, but to fight against them. I've always been taught to be proud of being Latina, proud of being Mexican, and I was. I was probably more proud of being a label than of being a human being. That's the way most of us were taught. Since the day we entered into this world, we were a label, a number, a statistic. That's just the way it is. Now, if you ask me what race I am, like Zlata, I'll simply say, I am a human being. Diary 48. Dear Diary, today I went into the Croatian hall with Zlata and met a little boy named Tony, who lived a nightmare because he was Croatian. One night while he was asleep, Serbian soldiers came into his home and shot him in the face at point-blank range. A Bosnian woman lived in LA sponsored Tony's trip to the United States to have his jaw restructured. When we met him, he had only a metal plate holding his jaw together. When I saw Tony, I was grateful my family made it out of Peru before we were harmed, or worse, killed. I thought of my 3-year-old brother and pictured him standing in Tony's place telling his ghastly story. Like the life of my family, Tony's life had been permanently altered by the terror of war. He was a survivor of ethnic cleansing. We survived a revolution that turned into terrorism. Even though the Bosnian War was one of ethnicity and religion, it was just as senseless as the terrorism that ransacked my country. It forced many to leave behind their homes and their lives. Although the terror struggle in Peru started as a good cause, it turned many people's lives into a nightmare. Just walking by a parked car, you couldn't help wondering if there was a bomb hidden in its trunk. As you passed, you wonder if it was going to explode in your face. I remember my dad saying, everything will turn out okay. In the United States, there are more opportunities, better jobs, and no terrorists. When my dad said that, I didn't really understand what he meant. I was only 10. I was only thought about homework, food, TV, and going outside to play with my friends. I've been in the U.S. before visiting family, but never thought I would end up living here. 4 weeks after my dad told us we were moving, my grandmother called for us. My dad went to the American Embassy to take care of the paperwork for our green cards. We would get our social security numbers and green cards 3 months after our arrival in the United States. 3 weeks before flying to the U.S., terrorists blew up the house next to mine. The explosion woke everyone in the neighborhood. My eyes snapped open as a wave of warm air hit my face. I got out of bed, realizing there was only smoke and bright light where my bedroom window once was. I saw my mom running toward me screaming, but I couldn't hear her. All I heard was a ringing in my head. She grabbed me, shaking the ringing from my ear. I heard the turmoil in my neighborhood. She carried me outside, and my feet were bleeding from stepping on broken glass blown from my window. The fireman told my father that out of 20 sticks of dynamite, 10 exploded. If all had ignited, my house would have exploded too, and I realized the magnitude of what had happened and was glad to be moving to the U.S. My first day of school in the United States was very hard. I didn't understand any English words. Everything was so different. I had had some English classes in Peru, but nothing like this. Everybody spoke so fast. Their words were hard to follow. Everything sounded like R's and S's, and I couldn't talk, read, or write English. The third day of school, some Mexican guy spoke to me. We talked, played, and they taught me English. Like my first years in the U.S., Tony didn't understand English. My only way to communicate with him was to play with him. It lifted my heart to see his joy despite his tragic story. Though it hurt him to smile, he laughed anyway. Though he couldn't understand a word we were saying, he understood that we felt his pain. We, too, knew what it felt like to live amid war. When Zlata wrote about Bosnian children becoming the soldiers and the soldiers becoming children, at first I didn't get her meaning. Afterwards, Tony's story I understood. In war, the innocence of a child is lost, and though the soldiers felt theirs is a worthy cause, they behave like children when trying to achieve their goals. Knowing that a grown man entered a child's bedroom stealing his innocence makes me sad. They stole his smile, and Tony wears the permanent scars of war on his face, just as I wear the scars on my soul. Diary 49, Dear Diary. I am so exhausted from yesterday. We spent a whole day with Zlata and Mirna. Our marathon day started at 7 a.m. and I didn't get home until 10 p.m. last night. Or was it 11? Even though I'm exhausted, I can't wait to spend another day with them. Our day began with a breakfast by the Dream Team moms. These are the dedicated moms who have adopted our class as their kids. After we had breakfast, we left in buses to Los Angeles. It was my first time on a charter bus. The buses were air-conditioned, had televisions, a VCR, and lights that we could turn on and off on our seats, plus a bathroom, a big difference from the school buses. Soon, we got to the Museum of Tolerance, our first stop. For many, it was their first time there, but it was my second time. During our freshman year, we went straight to the museum's theater to watch Higher Learning. This time, we had a private tour of the museum. The museum focuses on stereotypes, prejudice, genocide, the history of intolerance. There were comic strips to show us some examples of how people are misjudged. and how our negative thoughts can lead to violence. Plus, there was a section of worn-out shoes, each representing a victim of the Holocaust. During the tour, I received a passport with a child's face and name. Throughout the museum, you get to find out what happens to them. Each room I went into, I would slip my passport into the computer and it would tell me the fate of the child. Some of my friends had passports where the child died. Many of us cried during our tour. After we came out of the museum, the ground was wet from rain. It seemed like the rain was a symbol of the tears for those who had died, as though they were crying out their tears of sorrows and stories to us. After the tour, we went to Lowry's, the House of Prime Rib, for lunch. It is located in Beverly Hills, and I was afraid to touch anything because I might break something. The dining tables had a candle with fresh flowers and the napkins folded in the fanciest ways. The seats were made of real leather. They weren't sticky and smelly like some restaurants I've been to. Lowry's treated us like royalty. The chef came around with food and the heated cart to serve us prime rib. Even the restroom was decorated with fresh flowers. One thing's for sure, it was a lot nicer than our school's restroom, with constantly smelled like cigarettes and have makeup stain on the mirrors and sink. Sometimes you will find the sinks clogged up with toilet paper Sometimes you will find the sinks clogged up with paper towels or see wadded toilet paper hanging from the ceiling. Once we were stuffed as pigs, we went back to the museum to watch a private screening of Schindler's List. Oskar Schindler started out as a man who wore his gold Nazi pin with pride. He couldn't care less about the Jews and others being rounded up and taken away in crowded cattle cars. During one of the Jewish roundups, he saw a little girl in a red petticoat. She stood out from everyone because the movie is black and white. She was running away from the chaos and hiding. And a few days later, he found her dead and a pile of other bodies ready to be thrown into the fire. That is when he started to try to save every Jew he could with the money he had. By the end, he saved over 1,000 Jews. The movie made Night, The Wave, and The Diary of a Young Girl come alive. One of my friends actually said he had flashbacks about the death of one of his friends. He said that the little girl's red coat reminded him of his friend's blood. It made me realize that the senseless violence doesn't only happen in history books or in movies. After the movie, we headed to the Century City Marriott Hotel to have a reception for Holocaust survivors and ourselves. The Holocaust survivor at our table showed us his tattoo, and it made me wonder if he ever tried to hide it from others. I wanted to know, what was he thinking every day in the camp? What was his greatest fear? Did he ever think of suicide? I wanted to ask, but I was too nervous, and I thought my questions were stupid. Near the end of dinner, students introduced the Holocaust survivors sitting with them and told us the most interesting information about their experiences. Some of my questions were actually answered, but there will always be more. I feel that reading the books gave me a foundation for this piece of history, but today's marathon was the museum and the movie, and especially meeting all of the survivors gave me a better understanding of the Holocaust. I'm glad they survived to tell us their stories and pass the batons. My fingertips are already tingling. Diary 50, Dear Diary. Sorry, Diary. I was going to try not to do it tonight, but the little baggie of white powder is calling my name. As I chop up the white rock on my special makeup mirror into very fine powder, I start thinking about the past week with Zlata and our infamous toast for a change. Zlata left today, and I can't help but feel guilty for what I've been doing lately. We're all about changing for the better, and I'm changing for the worst. This whole week, people have been looking at us as role model teenagers, and we have changed their lives. The local newspaper has actually done stories about us, bringing Zlata here, and how we've made monumental changes in our lives. That part is true, but then there's me. It does bother me that I'm being dishonest, especially to Zlata, but is it lying when I don't say anything? Miss Grohl would be so disappointed if she found out. I definitely can't say anything now because it would really make things worse. I don't know what she would do, especially since Zlata was here. I might as well keep it a secret at this point. I wish she wouldn't trust me so much. I mean, how can she trust me if I can't even trust myself? She shouldn't trust anyone who steals money from their family, begs friends for change, and digs in their couch just to support her drug habit. In some sick way, I wish I would get caught so all this lying could be behind me. But then reality kicks in when I see that lying in front of me. When it comes down to it, I'm not ready to change. I know I should stop, but it would be wrong to stop for someone else. When I hear cheesy cliches like hugs, not drugs, or be smart, don't start, it makes me want to do it more. Yak, yak, yak. Come on, get real. How boring. Quite honestly, I'm just not ready to quit yet. I'm what you call a closet tweaker. To clear things up, a tweaker is someone who smokes or snorts speed. Nobody knows my secret, especially Zlata. I like to keep it that way. It's not something to brag about. I'm getting to a point where I can hide it in plain sight. When Zlata was here, she and Miss Gorilla had no idea that I was high. I even got high before we went to Universal Studios with her, but I played it off as much as I could. Even though we were talking about our favorite bands between rides, I don't think she knew. When I first started getting high, I would be strung out and I couldn't sit still. But now I've learned how to control it and I can play it off. I guess that's what happens when you do it all the time. People never see what is right under their noses, and believe me, I use it to my advantage. The worst thing about it is I'm already in outpatient rehab 2 days a week. But I just have to make things worse by doing drugs more and more, harder and harder. It's so ironic how all this got started. I was put in rehab after our toast for a change for possession of marijuana, but now that I'm in rehab, I'm addicted to speed. What's the change in that? When everyone is changing their old habits, I'm making new ones. My worst fear is that I'm becoming an addict. I mean, can someone like me have an addiction? When I think of an addict, I think of someone walking the streets, begging people for change, sucking dick for a score, leaving their babies in the trash still alive. But when I think about it, I'm no better. I'm what you call a model child. A good daughter, one of the Mrs. Gorell's favorite students. And now I have an amazing new friend. But I'm lying to my mom, Miss G, and Zlata. Not exactly model child material. Now I guess you can call me an addict. No more A's on the tests or bringing teachers apples. Like I did that anyway. I'd beg, steal, and cheat just to get a quick line. Sure, it has its pitfalls, but you know what they say. Curiosity killed the cat. Well, not this cat. For me, a quick line is turned into a fast hit from the glass pipe. The higher the intensity, the better the high. That's my preferred party favor, the glass pipe. It kind of freaks me out because I never thought I would be at this point. Is there time to turn back, or am I going to get closer to a dark tunnel with no light and no way out? I'm actually relieved that this week with Zlata and all the attention is over. Not that it was boring, it was really fun, but I didn't deserve it. With all that behind me, I whip out my straw, sit down on the toilet, make sure the bathroom is locked, bring it to my nose, and snort. The burn is a sure sign that I'm on my way to my next high. Oh yeah, it's going to be good. No more headaches, body aches, or stomach aches until, of course, the high is over. But only until I reach for my best friend called crystal meth. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. We are at the last 4. I know, shocking, right? I hear this. Has already said that? Yeah, it's a reality. Okay, listen. No, before you get up, listen. Shh. There's more to this than just that line. I'm going to fair warn you guys, okay?
What, Christmas?
No, there's more to this about sex than that line in this book. Okay? I'm going to tell you, hey, I am talking. I am going to tell you right now, these kids are just like you guys. And there's stories that I've heard coming from these halls about kids. Okay? And there's things that happen here that nobody ever talks about. These guys talk about it. Okay? So I need to let you guys know that. Do you understand?